Welcome to Stories from the Top. I'm your host, Lance Tanaka, and I'll be interviewing successful executives from the best of the best global companies about leadership and their journey. You want insights on how to be a more effective leader? Then you must listen to Ed Evarts. He's the founder and president of Excellius Leadership Development, a leadership development organization focused on helping clients build their self-awareness on how others experience them in the workplace so they can manage that experience effectively. Ed is also the author of Drive Your Career and Raise Your Visibility and Value. And he's also the host of a weekly podcast, Be Brave at Work, where he chats with everyday folks and thought leaders on how to say what needs to be said and do what needs to be done more effectively. So welcome, Ed.
Thanks, Lance. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your great insights. I mean, you have an impressive background, and of course, I've already shared it. But I'd like you to maybe spend a little time expanding a bit on what it is that you do and why you do it.
The work that I do today really came to be by accident. I had been a corporate career person for most of my adult life, working in retailing and then in business-to-business services. And then in 2008, I left my last company, and I really found myself kind of tired of working for organizations with structure and fundamentals in place and all these things that made it hard to really navigate freely through life. And so I decided to open up my own practice. And my career had been focused in human resources and helping organizations develop and find and manage great people. And that was an area that was of interest to me. And within that, the discipline of coaching and really through conversation, helping people find their strengths and talk about the challenges that they're facing and come up with actions and solutions on how to navigate through them became of great interest. And so I became a coach. I went to coach school. I started from scratch. I think I am a classic example of someone leaving corporate and transitioning to consulting because it didn't happen purposefully, but it happened by chance. And I started from square one, building up my practice through education and then, of course, looking for clients and building my reputation in the marketplace. So today, Excellius Leadership Development focuses on three areas. We do one-on-one leadership coaching. So that's working with successful business individuals to help them be more successful. I do team coaching. So I work with teams to ensure that the time they spend together is productive and effective. And then I also do small business strategy. So I work for smaller businesses, typically 5 to 10 million in revenue, to help them because they are at some pivot point in their growth due to an acquisition or new products and services or some kind of change and really don't know how to move forward. And so I help them do that as well. So that's what we do today and how I interact in the marketplace.
Great. If you don't mind me asking, how old were you in 2008 when you made that change?
So I was 47.
So that's amazing. A lot of people and a lot of people that I talked to would love to have done what you did at 47. An LT observation. You're never too old to make a significant career change, especially if it leverages your strengths, passions, and experience.
Well, it wasn't, as I said, it wasn't by accident. I had a great career at a company in Boston. I had been there for 10 years. I loved it, yet the island I was on at the company continued to get a little bit smaller each year. And then in 2008, I was laid off. And so when I say I transitioned from corporate to consulting by accident, I mean it was by accident because I wasn't planning on leaving that company. I loved the company and I loved the opportunities that it provided me. Yet they made a decision to eliminate my position. And so I left the company and I just decided that I didn't want to go work for another company. I didn't want to continue to do what I did somewhere else. And I really wanted to tap into my skills and my experiences and organize it in a way that I could provide services and solutions to people individually. And so I began to investigate two things, Lance. I investigated what I wanted to work on, and the answer there was easy, which was coaching. And then secondly, how to run your own small business. I had never been self-employed. I had never run my own business, my own practice. And I continue to learn, as I do also with coaching, how to do that effectively. But, those were two areas of focus that I needed to work on in order to become successful in what I do.
Yeah, so you're a great example of adversity. In adversity, there is a silver lining. There is, an amazing thing or amazing life afterwards.
I think so. And I would also add for our listeners that the year it happened was not ideal. So the year my position was eliminated in the company was 2008. And of course, we had what might be called the mini recession or the Great Recession in 2008. And so there were a lot of people in the marketplace doing what I was doing, which was human resources, working for companies. And so that's one of the reasons I said, you know what, I don't want to become just another number on the chart of people who are looking for human resource roles. I think I want to use this time while the economy is restructuring and figuring out how to reinvent itself and grow to learn how to be a coach so that when the economy lights on fire again, which of course it did a few years later, I'm going to be in a sweet spot to benefit from it. And I think that was one of the more rare, brilliant insights that I had in my career. And that's what happened.
That's great. Okay. In the book Stories from the Top, I share about the 8 common leadership challenges facing leaders. And the number one challenge is around finding your purpose, becoming an authentic leader, to essentially be the person or leader you were designed to be. So I'd like you to comment about your journey because it sounds like you're living your life of purpose. You've discovered what that is, and now you're leveraging the heck out of it. Can you comment on that journey?
Sure. And, I think a lot of people find their skill set through practice. And so I think there's a lot of great books you can read on skills and attributes that are needed to be a great leader. There are mentors you can work with who can provide you insights and observations on how to be a great leader. I think we all are different types of great leaders. I don't think there's one model for a great leader. But certainly the organizations you work in, your age, the size of your group, the size of your revenue, right? There's all these variables that can influence who you are and how you need to be. And yet I believe that the way that we become the leader that we're destined to be is through experience. And so through experience in working with others, being highly self-aware of what you do that works and what you do that may not work, and being proactive to address those particular areas helps you become that leader that you were meant to be, whoever it might be. I don't think any two leaders are the same. So I've worked with hundreds of clients, and I would tell you all of these clients are different in respect to their priorities, their experiences, their histories. Everyone is different on that front. And most, not all of them, are very, very effective leaders in so many different ways.
Yeah. Other than experiences, were there any other things you did to identify your plan, your strength?
Well, I've taken a number of 360 assessments. And so as part of building your self-awareness, and let me go back for a second, Lance, I think a key activity you have to do in order to find your true self and become the leader that you're meant to be is to have high self-awareness. If you don't know how others experience you in life, you're going to be able to self-manage yourself. If you operate in a certain way and don't care what people think, you're going to be the proverbial bull in the china shop because you're not going to know or care how people experience you in the workplace. So building self-awareness is, I think, critical in respect to helping you become a better leader. And that's one of the reasons I went into coaching, is because I help people build their self-awareness so that they can self-manage more effectively. What I was talking about a moment ago was a 360 assessment is a great way to go out and hear from people how they experience you, good and bad. And nobody is ever perfect. So everybody's 360 includes information that is helpful and information that might be constructive that they need to know. There are oftentimes things people want to tell you, but they don't know how to tell you, so they don't tell you. But in a 360, it's confidential and anonymous. And so oftentimes they'll tell you what it is that they've been wanting to tell you because they haven't been able to, tell you one-on-one. So, that's another way, Lance, that people can build self-awareness on how people experience them so that they can really maximize the strengths that they have as a leader.
An LT observation. A key activity is having high self-awareness. Now, there are many good tools out there to identify your strengths, your passions, your experiences. If you're interested, check out my tool, Dream and Achieve DNA, that I created to identify and map out purpose and put a plan to successfully retire. And on your journey to become this successful coach and consultant and podcaster, I'm sure you faced some challenges and barriers. So, what were they, and then what did you do to overcome them or address them or manage around them?
So I think maybe I'll mention three challenges that I have faced briefly. The first was generating revenue. So any business, of course, needs revenue in order to continue. And, I was the primary breadwinner in my family, and I wanted to continue that status. So I needed to generate revenue. And as I mentioned earlier, I started from scratch. It's not like I had been planning to be a coach for 10 years and then finally did it. I found myself in transition between employment, wanted to think about what I wanted to do next, decided to become a coach, and then started working on it. And early on, I pretty much would take any opportunity that came along because all cash is good. Today, of course, that's no longer the case, and I'm way more selective in the type of work that I do because my skill set is way more focused. But I think, challenge number one is, being open to and thinking about, how can I ensure that I can demonstrate that what I want to do will work by generating revenue, right? There's a million ideas out there that have been patented that have never generated any money because they either are ahead of their time or nobody wants whatever it is that that person thought would be important. So, one obstacle certainly is, generating revenue. I do think revenue is king. And then, of course, cash flow is queen because in addition to generating revenue, you also have to collect it. And not all companies pay on time, or some companies have extended pay cycles. And so you really have to manage to the best that you can when you're getting paid in addition to generating that revenue. Any thoughts or questions on that, Lance?
No, that's clear. And it's the same thing that I faced when I started the company.
Right. So, I'm not suggesting that it's all about revenue, but revenue is the blood of the organization. So you need it in order to demonstrate that the work you're doing is effective and wanted in the marketplace, right? I mean, I'm sure as an entrepreneur, that's been a significant focus for you. A second obstacle has been for those of our listeners who are self-employed. I know not everybody is self-employed. For those that are employed, is what I would call administrivia, which is all of the detail work that you have to do in order to operate your freely. And it includes things like tracking all your expenses, scheduling all of your meetings, sending and receiving invoices and sending out invoices, managing paperwork flow, things that go to clients and come back to clients. I'm self-employed. I am my only employee, so I do all that work. And from time to time, I think about hiring a third-party admin to help me do it. But, I seem to be able to manage it somewhat effectively. But that for a lot of people can be a huge obstacle because they're not good at managing that administrivia. Or it takes too much time and they can't focus on the work they need to do, right? I mean, you don't want to distract from the work that you're doing because of the need to complete reports or administrivia. So, that's another obstacle that I think is out there that are important for people to think about today, of course, because of the fact that we live in a world who are third-party administrators who can help you do that if this is not a sweet spot for you. But, for me, it is something that I do. And then the third thing I would just share with you quickly is marketing. So certainly for people like myself who do leadership coaching, most of them would tell you that they are not great at marketing. If I was in a meeting with 100 coaches and they asked people to raise their hands who love and engage in marketing, my guess would be 5 would. That, the vast majority of coaches do not like talking about what they do. They do not like marketing. They expect that once they say they're a coach, that everyone's going to come running to them. And of course, that's not the case. So Fortunately for me, I enjoy marketing. I enjoy talking about what I do. I enjoy being creative in the marketplace. Some of the work that I've done that you've mentioned, my podcast and my two books, are part of that marketing mentality to get my name out there and have things that I can talk about and share with others. So marketing itself as well is a potential obstacle for others who are looking to really successfully run their own business.
Excellent. Okay, now Ed, you've worked with a number of leaders throughout the U.S. Regarding this concept of authentic leadership, do you feel that this is an important thing for leaders to be able to identify?
I think it is important for leaders to identify authentic leadership. One of the challenges we face right now, Lance, is there is no real concrete definition of authentic leadership. It's one of those things that like everybody wants, but nobody knows what it is. Kind of like executive presence, right? Everybody talks about, hey, I've been told that I need to improve my executive presence, but everybody has a different definition of what it is. So, authenticity to me is the ability of a leader to be transparent with others, so not secretive, not playing games, not melodramatic like on a soap opera, but being transparent with others. It's being empathetic with others, which I think is a key strategic tool. A lot of people think empathy is soft and weak, but I believe, based on the relationships that I've had with many of my clients, that being empathetic is a significant strategic strength. And so you need to show empathy with others as often as you can. And then the third would be just the ability to build relationships. That most work gets done through great relationships. If I had a great relationship with you, the likelihood for us doing something together is going to be significantly different than if I don't have a good relationship with you. And a lot of people don't think about that, or they spend time so focused on what they do, they're not spending enough time on how they do it. And so that becomes critically important to them. So I think if you're transparent, if you show and demonstrate empathy, and that you focus on the importance of building relationships, you will be known as a authentic leader. Again, different people have different definitions. I'm not suggesting that's the only one, but those are three things I think about when I create a desire for myself as well to be an authentic leader with the folks that I work with.
Yeah, and I don't think it really matters if there's a set definition of what it is, but it's important for that individual, for that leader, to be able to identify, this is who I am, right? This is how I'm going to lead.
Well, the joke oftentimes is someone will say to me, Ed, I want to be an authentic leader. And I say, fantastic. What does that mean? And now they stumble because they haven't really thought about, well, I don't know how to be an authentic leader, right? I want it, but I don't know what it is. And so we'll spend a little time talking about, well, what does it mean to you? And because everybody has potentially their own definition, but if you were known as an authentic leader here at your organization, what would it feel like? How would people treat you? What would you do differently than you're doing today, right? And then let's focus on those things so you can make great progress. Love working with people who say, Ed, the area I want to work on is authentic leadership, because now we have a tangible goal we can work on. And I can ask them 6 months from now, hey, Lance, when we first met 6 months ago, you wanted to become a more authentic leader. How are you doing? Do you feel good about it? And of course, my hope would be that they would say, absolutely. We have made significant progress in respect to my desire to be a more authentic leader at an organization.
So then if somebody wants to become an authentic leader or even figure out what that definition is, what kind of advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I think, one of the important things for people to do is, as I mentioned, as the third component of authentic leadership is relationship building. And so I think it starts talking with people who care about you and saying, something that I'd love to do, Lance, is build my leadership skills, especially in the area of authenticity. What is it that you think I do well? And what are some areas of opportunity that I might focus on? And please be candid and honest. I'm not judging or belittling anything that you might say, because I'm really serious that I really want to get better at this. And I can't get better at it unless I know. So I think starting with people with whom you have a very good, positive relationship, it may be hard for them to say some of the constructive stuff because they feel like they may be offensive to you. But if they are people who have a strong relationship and they start talking about the things that you could do a little bit differently to be more effective, I think your likelihood of finding your answer to authentic leadership is a lot greater.
An LT observation. As a leader, be transparent. And it's okay to show some vulnerability. Ask for feedback to your people on, how am I doing? What am I doing well? What could I do to be more effective? Do you find that people struggle with that? Not giving the feedback, but a leader to say, hey, I'd like to know what you think.
So the number one area that I believe most leaders struggle with is moving from ideas to action. And I tell people all the time, you could go to Google today. We live in a virtual world. You don't need me to come up with how to be more authentic, how to be a better communicator, how to hold people more accountable. There's millions of articles and things online that you can work on. What you struggle with is how to convert it to action. So, I find that it's challenging for both parties. It's very hard, for whatever reason, for someone to ask somebody else for feedback. This is just not something we have learned growing up, especially in the United States of America. We haven't, in junior high, high school, or college, been taught how to collect or how to give feedback. And so when we're asked, it's hard to do, and it's hard to provide it. So when it says, hey, I'm looking for some feedback, Ed, I probably instantly think there's something else going on here, and I'm not completely comfortable, or I don't think we have that great a relationship, so this is going to be awkward, whatever it might be. But that's one of the reasons I like 360 assessments, is because people know that the feedback that they're providing is confidential and anonymous. And by the way, you're the only one who sees the 360 feedback. It's not something that leaders in your organization see. The only people who see it are you and your coach, because it's hard for people to give it. So at a glance, it's hard to ask for, and it's hard to give.
Yeah, but I think that's great advice to give to a leader who wants to discover, because that gets into the first thing that you talked about, is transparency. If you can say, hey, this is something I want to build, I want to, I want to develop that. I think that shows great transparency to your people.
I think so. I wish during my corporate career that I had a coach or a mentor who had made that suggestion, because oftentimes it's also something people don't think to do. So it's not even in their skill set to say to somebody else, hey, how am I doing as a leader in the organization? What would you say are the top 3 things that I do really well? And what would you say are the top 3 things I could be doing differently to be more effective? This isn't even something that's happening on a regular basis in most organizations, and it's a miss. If I don't know how other people experience me, how can I manage them more effectively, right? So we should be open and transparent with each other, both about the things that we're doing really well so we can do more of them, and the things that we could be doing differently to be more effective. This is why I love coaching, because I can help introduce these concepts to individuals or teams, and people are better off afterwards having had these conversations than they were when we first met.
But I think that's brilliant advice. Thank you for that. Okay, so let's transition. I talked about the stories from the top, the 8 challenges, and you've just shared about number 1, which is about being authentic leader. And you work with a number of organizations in helping them to maybe adopt or adapt a change in mindsets, which is challenge number 6. I like to quote Simon Sinek, who espouses that when you get the environment right, people can do remarkable things. So what kind of advice would you give to a leader or an organization that wants to adapt or transform or transition a mindset culture change?
Well, I love Simon Sinek's quote, because I do believe culture is a significant influence in how people operate at an organization. If you were in an organization where candor, respectful and professional, of course, but candor was a key component, and it's articulated, it's demonstrated by leaders, it's rewarded by leaders, your likelihood for being candid is much more likely than an organization where it's forbidden. And, we never tell anybody bad news or things that they're doing that are a great influence. The piece of advice that I would give folks comes from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And habit number 5 is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And I would tell you, Lance, in organizations across the globe, if people who had an opinion or people who felt a certain way first spent time understanding how the other person felt through curiosity and through listening before they even shared their opinion or thought, which might get modified based on what they've heard, organizations would run way smoother than they do today. Unfortunately, we don't do that. We typically want to first share what we're thinking and then listen to you. And because I've already shared what I'm thinking, especially if I'm the boss, it might influence your perspective. So, I believe that leaders across the globe, if they seek first to understand through curiosity and listening and asking questions, the outcomes that you'll achieve will be significantly more positive and help organizations grow and evolve in more effective ways.
Yeah, that comes out of your book, Drive Your Career. In fact, I quote you, if you don't mind. I quote you about leaders. You need to be curious, and you need to be, it's the power of questions, as you said. Ask people what they think, what they feel. First understand, and then be understood.
Right, and I think questions are important. I think, unfortunately, we've made an industry out of questioning, and I think it intimidates some people to think that, questions are these complex or challenging things. And I tell people, no, questions can be very, very simple. It could be things like, tell me more about that. Why do you feel that way? Where is that experience coming from? Right? Very basic, simple questions. What you want to do is encourage the other person to talk. And when you say, why do you feel that way? They can talk for an hour about that one question you just asked. So I think curiosity is extremely important to ensure if you want to be an authentic leader, you have to demonstrate to people that they are important and how they think and what they want to contribute are important. And one of the best ways to do that is curiosity.
LT observation. Seek first to understand, then be understood. Through curiosity, listening, and asking questions. You do this, your outcomes will be more positive and can be significant. And I would highly recommend to the listeners to get your book, Drive Your Career, and the other one, Raise Your Visibility and Value. I think there's just great nuggets in there that are really important to be, more effective leader.
Great, thank you. Raise Your Visibility and Value was my first book, and that one really focused on moving from networking, which of course back in 2008, 2009, and 2010 was the key word of the industry, really moving from networking to raising your visibility. How can I be more visible within my organization? How can I be more visible within my industry? And what are some steps and actions that I can do on that front? So,
okay, thank you very much, Ed. How is it best for people to contact you if they'd like to know more information about you and the services that you provide?
Please go to my website, which is www.excelius.com. That's EXCELLIUS.com. Information about the book, information about the podcast, information about the work I do can all be found there.
Ed Evarts, president of Excelius. Also a leadership coach, author, podcast host. Ed, thank you so much for your great insights.
Lance, it was great chatting with you today. Thank you.
My pleasure. Have a great day. If you enjoyed listening to these insights, check out my other interviews with successful leaders in Stories from the Top podcast. Also, if you're interested in getting on the path to purpose, check out Dream and Achieve, DNA, on my website, lancetanakagroup.com.